Dr. Harris now has 8 minutes. Timekeeper, are you ready? Begin.
Well, perhaps you've noticed Dr. Craig has a charming habit of summarizing his opponent's points in a way in which they were not actually given, so I will leave it to you to sort it out on YouTube. Needless to say, I didn't call those esteemed colleagues of his psychopaths, as I made clear. In any case, Dr. Craig has merely defined God as being intrinsically good. If you want to charge someone with merely semantic games, the shoe's on the other foot as well. There is no reason that I can see why there couldn't be an evil God, or several. Okay, but his God is intrinsically good. Goodness is grounded in his very nature. That is a definitional move that he has made. Now, I have presented a positive case for grounding an objective morality in the context of science. And thinking about moral truth in the context of science should only pose a problem for you if you imagine that a science of morality has to be absolutely self-justifying in a way that no science ever could be. Okay, every branch of science must rely on certain axiomatic assumptions, okay, certain core values. And a science of morality would be on the same footing as a science of medicine or physics or chemistry. You need only assume that the worst possible misery for everyone is bad and worth avoiding, and indeed the worst case scenario for conscious life. And if science is unscientific, if having a value assumption at the core renders science unscientific, what is scientific? Now, Dr. Craig is confused about what it means to speak with scientific objectivity about the human condition. He says things like, from the point of view of science, we're just constellations of atoms and we're no more valuable than rats or insects. Okay, as though the only scientifically objective thing that could be said about us is that we're constellations of atoms. Okay, there are two very different senses in which we use these terms subjective and objective. Okay, the first is epistemological. It relates to how we know. And when we say we're reasoning or thinking objectively in this sense, we're talking about the style in which we're thinking. We're talking about the fact that we're seeing through our biases, which is to say, trying to jettison bias. We are reasoning in a way that's available to the data. Our minds are open to counter arguments. Now, this is the absolute foundation of science, and this is what opens such an invidious gulf between science and religion, the difference here in this approach to objectivity. But science does not require that we ignore the fact that certain facts are subjective, ontologically subjective. Okay, there are facts about the human condition that science can understand and study that are first-person facts, facts about what it's like to be you. Okay, and we can study these facts, and our study of them reveals how much deeper and richer and more meaningful our lives are than the lives of cockroaches. Okay, so this is a false reductionism that he's purveying here. Now, so there are subjective facts. If you happen to have an intact nervous system, being burned alive will be excruciatingly painful. The painfulness of pain is a subjective fact about you. Okay, what my argument entails is that we can speak objectively about a certain class of subjective facts that go by the name of morality, that relate to questions of good and evil, and these depend upon the well-being of conscious creatures, especially our own. And by this light, we can see that it's possible to value the wrong things. I mean, if you think you prefer to be neurotic and in pain, and incapable of creative work, and completely disconnected from other people, there's something wrong with you. Okay, objectively wrong with you? Yes. Okay. In that you are closed to higher states of consciousness. Higher with respect to what? Higher as in further from the lowest possible state of consciousness, the worst possible misery for everyone. Okay, is the worst possible misery for everyone really bad? Once again, we have hit philosophical bedrock with the shovel of a stupid question. Now, I want to take a brief moment to speak about these higher possibilities, because it's often thought that non-believers like myself are closed to some remarkable experiences that religious people have. That's not true. That's not true. There's nothing that prevents an atheist from experiencing self-transcending love and ecstasy and rapture and awe. There's nothing that prevents an atheist from going into a cave for a year like a proper mystic and doing nothing but meditate on compassion, say. What atheists don't tend to do is make unjustifiable and unjustified claims about the nature of the cosmos or about the divine origin of certain books on the basis of those experiences. Now, the prospect of somebody becoming a true saint in life and inspiring people long after their deaths is something that I take very seriously. I've spent a lot of time studying meditation with some very great, wise old yogis and Tibetan lamas who've spent decades on retreat. Really remarkable people. Okay? People who I actually consider to be spiritual geniuses of a certain sort. And so I can well imagine if Jesus was a spiritual genius, a palpably non-neurotic and charismatic and wise person, I can well imagine the experience of his disciples. I can well imagine the kind of influence he could have on their lives. Okay? We do not have to presuppose anything on insufficient evidence in order to explore this higher terrain of human well-being. We don't have to take anything on faith. We don't have to lie to ourselves or to our children about the nature of reality. If we want to understand our situation in the world, along with these deeper possibilities, we have to do it in the spirit of science. Okay, given that people have had these remarkable experiences in every context, while worshiping one God, while worshiping hundreds, while worshiping none, that proves that a deeper principle is at work. That the sectarian claims of our various religions can't possibly be true in that context. And all we have is human conversation to capture these possibilities. We can either have a first century conversation as dictated by the New Testament, or a 7th century conversation as dictated by the Quran, or a 21st century conversation that leaves us open to the full wealth of human learning. Please think about these things.